Renowned director Vijay Anand presents Namaste. I'm Grishma and I welcome you to the Indie Cineglitz channel. Based on the novel The Guide by India's popular author R.K. Narayan. The story begins with a man named Raju who has just been released from jail. He seems restless and lost in thoughts. He is looking at the view of the city where he lives. He is eager to return to the city he calls home and where he grew up. But the people he hurt, the ones he troubled, were also his own. The faces of his mother, uncle, Rosie, and his friends keep floating before his eyes. He fears that if he returns, will they forgive him or condemn him as a criminal? He loses the courage to face them and walks away from the city. Raju sets out on an unknown journey with neither a goal nor a destination. He passes through many villages and towns. His shoes and clothes get torn and he suffers from hunger, but he doesn't stop and keeps moving forward. One night, he takes refuge in a village temple where a group of traveling hermits offer him clothes and food. When he wakes up the next morning, he finds a villager named Bhola standing in front of him, who mistakes Raju for a hermit from his clothes. He seeks Raju's help to solve his problem, and when Raju helps, Bhola spreads the news that a divine hermit has arrived at the village temple, causing the whole village to rush to see him and pleads with him to stay in the village for a few more days. Raju becomes a sensation and people flock to seek his blessings. This enrages the village priests and they provoke Raju to prove his religious merit and knowledge. But Raju outwits them and the villagers start considering him a godman who has been sent for them. But Raju refuses to call himself a holy man and starts helping the simple-minded villagers as much as he can. He becomes their spiritual guide who constantly works for the betterment of the village. On the other hand, on the day of Raju's scheduled release from jail, both Raju's mother and Rosie come to receive him. But there they learn that Raju has been released 6 months earlier for his good behavior. Both are shocked why Raju has not returned home. Raju's mother, who's upset with Rosie, blames her for ruining her son's life and demands an explanation. Rosie then presents her side of story, saying that she is the daughter of a Devdasi, who are female servants of the gods. Devdasi is an age-old inhuman practice in which young girls are married to deities in the name of religion and donated to temples. They are forced to devote their lives serving the gods and can't marry or lead a normal life. Devdasis face many types of exploitation and are seen as public property and sexual objects under sacred prostitution. They and their children are considered inferior in society, and even though it's illegal and abolished in India, cases of Devdasis are still found. But Rosie's mother wanted to keep her away from this world and give her a better life. She gets her married to a rich, middle-aged man. But soon, Rosie realizes that her husband Marco is obsessed with his work as an archaeologist and has no interest in her or their married life. Rosie loved dancing and even mastered it, but the conservative Marco didn't like the idea of a respectable man like him having a dancer as a wife. He despised Rosie's passion for dancing, and hence she was feeling suffocated in her miserable marriage and was unhappy with Marco's indifferent behavior. Raju, on the other hand, was working as a tourist guide in the city. He knew many languages and was well versed in history. He used to educate tourists in his entertaining style, due to which he was in demand. Meanwhile, Marco arrives in his city with Rosie in search of ancient caves. He hires Raju as a guide and wants to focus on his research without any interruption. But Rosie wants to roam around the city and has no interest in exploring the caves hidden in the remote mountains, leading to frequent quarrels between the two. One day, a furious Rosie asks Raju to take her to a colony of snake charmers. Raju takes her to one such colony where the tribals were performing the traditional dance. Rosie is delighted and starts dancing with them. She vents all her frustration and anger through her dance, while Raju is impressed by her dancing skills and now begins to sympathize with her. The next day, Raju takes Marco to the caves. While exploring, Marco notices that there is another cave hidden somewhere. He becomes obsessed with finding it and camps there. Raju tries to remind him about his wife, but Marco has no time to waste on her. He sends Raju back to the city to get more workers and immerse himself in exploring the caves. Meanwhile, Rosie tries to commit suicide in despair. Raju saves her life and helps her recover. When Raju informs Marco about her, Marco returns to the city and scolds Rosie for her stupidity and wasting his precious time. He tells her that if she is not happy, despite wasting a lot of money on her, she then just wants to defame him and play the victim card. He also accuses her of plotting a fake suicide to discredit him in order to gain sympathy from others. Rosie now had enough and tries to run away from him, but Raju follows her and persuades her to come back. By then, Marco returns to the mountains and leaves a letter for Rosie, stating that it will be a while before he returns, so she should go back hometown. Rosie then asks Raju to tour around the city. She shops her favorite things, sings, dances, and looks delighted. Raju is surprised to see that Rosie, who was sad a few moments ago, suddenly became so cheerful and happy. Rosie replies that after a long time, she feels free from the shackles and has stepped out of the darkness. She is relieved and finds life beautiful and hopeful again. She now considers Raju as her dear friend and tells him her life story. Raju encourages her to pursue her dream of becoming a professional dancer and overcome every obstacle that comes her way. Raju's words boost her courage and she reaches the caves to confront Marco but finds him committing adultery with a woman. Raju, who has learned by now that Marco was a hard-nosed man, while Rosie was a dreamer who wanted to fly. He tells her that this is her do or die moment where she has to decide either to take her life in the right direction or live with regrets. Rosie then finally faces Marco and tells him all she wanted was his love and to be a mother, which he never cared about. She demands an answer that why did he even get married and ruin her life. Marco then admits that he married her because of her beauty and he can have many women like her if he wants. He reminds her that she belongs to the Devdasi community and that's why he always hated her. Rosie slaps Marco, leaves him and seeks Raju's help. Raju then confesses his love for her and says that he believes in her and promises that he will help her achieve her dream. He shelters Rosie in his house and Rosie begins her dance practice. But the conservative society that look down on dancers sees Raju and Rosie's relationship as immoral. Raju invites many trouble for having a relationship with a married woman, which angers Raju's mother and his friends. They blame Rosie for Raju's downfall and ask her to leave him. But Raju sticks to his decision and is against leaving her, due to which his mother and friends abandon him. And now, Raju and Rosie are left alone. But they don't give up and start approaching dance organizers for Rosie's show and they succeed. Rosie starts getting dance shows and gradually she rises as a popular dancer in the city, and Rosie's manager Raju is busy with the city's leading businessmen, artists, politicians and affluents for potential clients. Raju and Rosie are now rich and living a luxurious life. But as Rosie's popularity grows, Raju becomes greedy for money and gets addicted to alcohol and gambling. He is often drunk and becomes reckless, which upsets Rosie. They start quarreling and a rift develops between them. One day, when Rosie confronts him about squandering money on frivolous things, Raju reminds her that he's the one who brought her here and she's nobody without him, which further strains their relationship. Meanwhile, Marco regrets seeing Rosie's success and to win her back, he wants to gift her jewelry, which is deposited in their joint bank account, for which he needs Rosie's signature. He sends the documents to Rosie, but they fall into Raju's hands. Raju now fears that amidst his deteriorating relationship with Rosie, if Marco returns into her life, Rosie will leave him and go back to Marco. He gets jealous and sends the documents with Rosie's forged signature without informing her. He also tries to mend his relationship with Rosie, but Rosie is fed up with his constant lies and tells him that he's free to do whatever he wants in life, as she doesn't care anymore. On the other hand, Marco catches Raju's fraud and sues him for forging Rosie's signature, for which he's sentenced to 2 years in prison. Rosie is hurt by Raju's deception, but hopes that now Raju will realize his mistake and reform in jail. The prison experience teaches Raju a lot. He begins to realize his mistake, unashamed of his deeds, and doesn't consider himself worthy of his loved ones. He sobers down and becomes neutral towards life. He behaves well and tries to help everyone around him. Seeing his progress and good conduct, he gets released early from jail. The movie now flashes back to the present where Rosie is narrating her story to Raju's mother. Rosie apologizes for upsetting her and admits that she still loves Raju and wants him back in her life. The misunderstanding between the two gets cleared and they start searching for Raju. On the other hand, Raju, who is now respectfully called Swami by the villagers, ushered the wave of development in the village. With the help of administration, he built school, hospital, good roads in the village and became beloved by all. Everything was going well, but within a few months, famine hit the village. Rivers, wells gradually dried up and the struggle for water began. Cattle became malnourished and crops slowly started withering due to lack of water. The villagers were now losing their heads and seeking an explanation from Swami. But this time, his philosophical approach and advice to be patient didn't work. The tension began to rise. The grain reserves in the village started dwindling, which the brokers took advantage of and started selling at double the price. This triggers a dispute, and one night, violence erupts in the village, in which Bhola and several villagers get injured. The next morning, Bhola's younger brother comes to see Swami. He narrates the incident and informs him that Bhola and his companion are now planning a counterattack. Angered by this, Raju sends a stern message to the villagers that he doesn't want them to fight like this, and if they don't stop this madness, he will give up the food. But Bhola's foolish brother misinterprets his words and tells the villagers that Swami is abstaining from food for rain. Bhola and villagers are embarrassed to hear that Swami is giving up food for the welfare of the village, and they are busy breaking each other's heads. They realize their mistake and reach the temple to meet Swami. Upon reaching the temple, the villagers bow down before Raju and express their gratitude for his selfless sacrifice and hail him. When a bewildered Raju asks Bhola for an explanation, he tells him that the village is blessed to have a saint like him, who, seeing the suffering of the village, will give up food for 12 days so that it rains and the plight of his people is alleviated. Raju now realizes that it's time to shed the mask that he had put up while taking refuge in this village to run away from his troubles. He had stayed in this village for his erudition and wisdom as compared to the uneducated but kind, innocent villagers. Although he had refused to call himself a holy man and help the village prosper in return for their favors, he stayed there because it solved his livelihood problems and incidentally earned him sainthood and respect. But today was his testing time. He was aware of the devotion and reverence of the villagers towards him, but today, for the first time, he felt the weight of its significance, expectations, and responsibility which he had taken lightly until now. It made him feel burdened and uncomfortable. He remembered that once he himself had told them the story of a saint who brought rain to a drought-stricken village after fasting for 12 days, which villagers were now expecting from him to do so. He tries to convince Bhola that the story he told is a fiction made for children, and no matter how great a saint is, but in reality, no one can make it rain. He then narrates him the story of his life, how he was a man full of jealousy and arrogance, who hurt, lied, and cheated people, and that he never deserved this respect but only stayed in the village for his own selfish reasons. But Bhola replies that just like gold shines after being heated in a furnace, wisdom is attained by a person who has made mistakes, suffered losses, and later repented. Bhola says that his faith in Swami has strengthened more because the path of knowledge is achieved by transcending such desires, and his penance will be so powerful that the clouds will burst and it will rain. When all of Raju's efforts to convince the villagers were unsuccessful, he tried to run away but failed. Now he has to fast for 12 days. He tried to eat secretly, but that also failed. The news of the holy man's penance to end the drought gradually spread across the province. People flocked to seek his blessings. Gatherings are held outside the temple where Swami prayed for rain. Meanwhile, Raju's mother comes to seek the blessings of Swami, the rain god, but finds that he is her son, Raju. But due to hunger and dehydration, Raju starts experiencing brain fog and fatigue. His mind starts playing tricks and he's caught in a conflict of thoughts. One day he hears himself saying that if they have so much faith in you, if they believe that you are their savior and will take away their troubles, then why not give it a try? Whatever task life has assigned you, just surrender to it, be the factor, and leave rest to fate. This idea gives him strength, and now he's determined to fully implement it. The news of the rain god creates a stir in the media, and journalists compete to cover this sensational news. Hearing this, Rosie also comes to meet Raju, which again puts Raju in a conflict of thoughts. Once a city guide, mentor, and now a spiritual guide for others, Raju is now failing to guide himself. A confrontation intensifies between Swami and Raju. Delighted, Raju says that now with the return of his mother and Rosie, a new happy life is calling for him. And doesn't he know that a man's penance has nothing to do with nature and his fasting can never bring rain? So give up this nonsense and return to his previous life. Swami replies that people's expectations and beliefs have thrown him into a storm of thoughts and doubts in which he He's struggling to find answers. His questions now transcended his existence, and all he wants to know is how far can a man's willpower and determination go, and whether he can achieve even the most impossible goals. And thus, Swami wins over Raju and he continues his penance. People from all over the country gather there and pray for Swami and for rain. Gradually, Swami's condition deteriorates and he's unable to move. The world around him goes blank, and most of the time, he just keeps mumbling indistinct words of prayer. Soon, Swami begins to have hallucinations and is confined to bed. As the prayers outside the temple grow louder, Raju's attempts to save himself from Swami get weaker. Swami now finds himself moving towards the light and peace. On the last day of the fast, his loved ones and devotees have gathered around him and are worried. Swami whispers that it's raining somewhere on a distant hill and he is getting drenched in it. Suddenly, clouds thunder and soon it starts raining. Everyone rushes outside to witness the much-awaited rain and starts celebrating. Rosie runs back to Swami to give him the good news that finally it's raining. But their guide, who was transformed from an ordinary man into their Masiha, is now gone from this world forever.
So this was our favorite movie of the day. Do tell us your opinion in the comment section. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe our channel. Take care.